Welcome to East Meets West. You know him as the host of the podcast, Talking Politics and Religion Without Killing Each Other. And the second most important person to hail from Freehold, New Jersey, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Corey Nathan. Hey, Corey.
He is the 7-time Emmy-winning broadcast journalist, born and raised in beautiful Los Angeles. Rick Garcia. Rick, I know what you're thinking, man.
What am I thinking?
You're looking at my New York Knicks hat, and it's bad enough that my single-A Brooklyn Cyclones won their championship. Bad enough that my double-A Binghamton Rumble Ponies won their championship. But the New York Knicks won the most significant championship, arguably, of the last decade, the 2025 NBA Cup.
What's a Rumble Pony? That's really the question that comes to my mind.
I have no idea, but it's a great name, isn't it?
Or the Rumble Ponies. Those minor league teams know how to do things, don't they? Talk about branding. All right, Corey, let's talk about college football. The playoffs we're kind of right into the meat and potato of the college football playoffs. And I don't know that there were any surprises at all in the very first round of the playoffs. Alabama did prove me wrong. I think I said in a previous episode that I didn't think that Alabama had earned the right to be in the college football playoffs due to the fact that they had 3 losses already, and they're playing teams again that they already had played. But they did beat Oklahoma. Beat them by 10 points. We also learned that James Madison and Tulane probably did not belong in the playoffs, as a lot of folks have pointed out going into this round. And then Miami and Texas A&M featured one of the most boring football games I think I've ever laid eyes on.
I thought I was watching a Marlins and Texas Rangers game there for a second based on the score.
It was not a lot of fun. So I'd say no surprises, and I want to get your thoughts on whether you thought there was anything that surprised you. But let me lay out what the quarterfinals look like, and you can obviously give us your input on what you think of the first round of playoff games. But now the quarterfinals will feature Oregon against Texas Tech, so we'll get some better competition there. Alabama now faces Indiana, which still seems to be the best team on paper. Ole Miss plays Georgia, and Miami's going to take on Ohio State. So thoughts on the first round, and if not, if you just want to go jump right into the quarterfinals, feel free.
Yeah, I was disappointed that Tulane and James Madison didn't give us a better showing, but they just reinforced the widely shared opinion that they don't belong in the same league as the SECs and the Big Ten, and they there's a difference. There's a clear separation there. So I do think that something needs to be rejiggered, if you will, so that a Notre Dame, if it's going to be 12, a Notre Dame has to be in that field.
Right.
They would have made a much better showing than Tulane or James Madison.
I agree. It showed us how much we did miss Notre Dame not being in the playoffs, and who knows how they would have played in their game had they showed up. But here's the problem with if you say, well, we've got the 10 teams that should be in, but if we would have just gone to 11 or 12, then Notre Dame gets in. Well, you could say, okay, but if we just went to 13 and 14, then we're back to the way this system was prior to that. I don't think it's expanded anymore. If you decide you want to go to the 12 teams, I get it. What you have to figure out is how much do some of these smaller conferences deserve to get in? This isn't about participation medals and ribbons, right? It's the best teams should be in this tournament. And so for that reason, that's why those 2 teams didn't belong. That doesn't mean that at some point down the road that one of them will get in. The flip side of that is, do you get sick of seeing the same old teams every single year?
Not necessarily. I mean, because you're going to see Indiana, for example, has come on the scene really strong this year. It's not to say that school has a lot of tradition, sports-wise, generally speaking, but their football team is just now coming on the scene. So you're going to have, but it has to be built over time.
Yeah.
Whereas, and as much as I love Tulane in particular, one of my best friends went to law school there. Now his daughter's going to law school there. As much as I have an affinity for the Tulanes and the James Madisons, I do think that there's a place for that. There are plenty of bowls that schools like that can participate in, but there's just a different terrain, if you will, for the Notre Dames and the Alabamas and the Ohio States of the world.
Right. And for James Madison, their coach is going to take over at UCLA, so he will be coaching against the big boys now next season. he's got a reputation for turning programs around, so it's possible in a couple of seasons that you might see UCLA on the radar at that point. So I think there are opportunities for those kinds of coaches. If you're a great college football player who maybe just didn't get a break coming out of high school, or maybe you've grown, you're bigger, you're stronger, you're faster. Well, there's the transfer portal. So I think there's always going to be an opportunity for great coaches and great players to participate in the college football playoffs, more so than ever. I just don't think we need to see the teams that aren't there yet be playing up there with the big boys. It's like watching the varsity take on the freshman team. It's just I don't want to watch it. It's not good television.
Unless it's a Kareem Abdul-Jabbar freshman team, right?
Good point. But we'd find that out, wouldn't we? I mean, if you're undefeated and you play a couple of out of conference big shot schools, an SEC school on the schedule or a Big Ten school on the schedule. Here's one way you could get around this. Some of these schedules that some of the college football teams have, they're playing Prairie View State. I'm making up. I don't even know if that's a school. I know there's a Prairie View, but I don't know if there's a Prairie View State. I'm making up. To have these large teams, these large college football teams, these universities playing these really small schools doesn't do anybody a favor, other than those small schools get money out of the deal. I get that. They make that money. Maybe you start, building outside your conference schedule with other conferences like a James Madison or a Tulane. Maybe, those are what you consider your lesser competition, which will give us a better idea of how good those teams are, whether they deserve to be in.
And it'll make those teams stronger. And by the way, that your argument right now, the logic that you're using right now is the reason that I am choosing one of the teams that will be a minor upset in the quarterfinals, and that is Oregon over Texas Tech. The biggest reason that I look at Texas Tech's season is they haven't played anybody. The one team that you could say maybe was Arizona State, and that was their one loss this year.
Okay, or that game against Miami, which was a tight game. They were in it. It's a game that we are told featured two good defenses. I don't know if that's the case, or if we saw two bad offenses.
Yeah,
that's one way to look at it, right?
Yeah.
Well, there you have it. Well, I mean, and by the way, here's my final thought on all of this is: do you know when they play the championship game?
Oh, it's got to be mid-January, because they're not playing these games until New Year's Day, New Year's Eve, and New Year's Day.
It's ridiculous. January 19th is the championship game. They start in August and they play to January 19th. I think the college football season is too long.
Well, so one of the reasons that I'm picking the upsets in the quarterfinals that I am is it the quarterfinal? No, yeah, it's the quarterfinal, quarterfinal, semifinals, and the final. One of the reasons that I'm picking the two upsets that I am is because of the long layoff. The team Texas Tech, Ohio State, Indiana, and Georgia haven't played since the first week of December. That is almost a month of a layoff. So I do think that Ohio State's going to win out against Miami. I do think that Georgia is going to pull it out against Ole Miss. They've been there before. They know what that layoff is. Their coaching is some of the best, if not the best, in the country. But like I said, Texas Tech, I just don't see where they've played, who they've played, and that long layoff is not going to serve them well. But the big upset that I was saying last week is Alabama, Indiana. I think Alabama is going to pull this out. Indiana had tough opponents, unlike Texas Tech. Right. However, the long layoff doesn't help them, and Indiana, as an organization, as a school, hasn't been here before.
No, they haven't.
They're new to this dance.
They haven't. But I will also say that their defense against some really good teams was impressive. And some might say that layoff allows you to heal up and get better and get stronger. So my picks on these four games, I think Oregon has an easy time with Texas Tech. I think Indiana beats Alabama. I think Indiana's for real. I'm gonna go with Georgia over Ole Miss. I think Georgia's also a decent football team still, and Ohio State. I think there, if not for that Indiana game, Ohio State is pretty darn good as well. So these are teams that all belong there, and so
the one that gives me the most pause is Georgia Ole Miss. I Because part of it is because Ole Miss already played Georgia, and they're the only team that put up some serious points against Georgia all year. Other than Tennessee, which was relatively early in the season, no one else scored against Georgia. And the long layoff again, I just don't think helps Georgia. At the end
All
of the
right.
day, I think Georgia wins it out, but that's the one that gives me the most pause.
Gotcha. All right, let's move on to the NFL. And the good news about the NFL, we'll have an opportunity to talk about playoffs as we get closer because I know a lot of the New York teams are on the verge of getting. Wait, I'm sorry, did I misspeak?
Wait! But we're talking about Buffalo. Come on, Buffalo's a New York team.
Okay. Yes, sir. Thank you. You're right. Thanks for the correction. Although I don't think the people in New York consider them a New York team. Do they?
It
Aren't
might
they
as well be Indiana,
they're a Canadian team, aren't they? Right?
the Indiana Bills.
It's interesting how. Well, we'll talk about that another time. Either Giants or Jets, right? You're one or the other. But you don't hear too many folks, that are huge Buffalo fans that are from New York, and I know they're there. I've covered games in Buffalo, probably one of the most raucous places that I've covered a game. I'll tell you about that too. But as we get closer to the playoffs, the NFL playoffs are almost set. So by the time the final week of the season rolls around, when we do our show, we'll be able to dive into that. In the meantime, we do have to continue with our Shedeur Sanders updates.
Speaking of Buffalo, yeah, they faced a
Yeah,
pretty
they
good
played the
quarterback.
Bills, and so you got to see what a future amazing quarterback looks like in Josh Allen.
Yeah.
Will Shedeur Sanders be that? Let's talk about his numbers for a moment. And I want to point out the numbers mean very little for a rookie quarterback this time of year. He was 20 for 29, 157 yards. He had a touchdown, two interceptions. The Bills, it appeared they were going to pretty much run away from this game. It was 20-3 at halftime, 23-10 after the third quarter, and or during the third quarter, and the Browns managed to add 10 points to the scoreboard. Here's the only thing I was thinking about on this. The best part about what's going on with Shedeur aren't the numbers, because his numbers, and we're going to talk about some of the other quarterbacks that are rookies and how they're stacking up. The numbers in that first year, I've said you could be rookie of the year, and it means nothing, as we learned from Sam Bradford and Robert Griffin III. You could have awful numbers and turn around and be incredible in your second year as an NFL quarterback. What I want to know about Shedeur Sanders is the reason he dropped down to the fifth round in the draft. A lot of the reason, rumors about his head and his focus is not where it should be as a quarterback. I want to see how he's developing in terms of his maturity. How is he acting with his teammates? How is he in the locker room? Is it still me? Or is it, man, I've got a chance here. I've got an opportunity, if not with the Browns, with other teams that may take a look at me. So am I focused? So that's what I'm looking at. Your thoughts after this game against Buffalo? What did you think of his performance?
In terms of the maturity, I don't think you're going to see significant differences from one week to the next. What I'd be interested in is seeing from one season to the next in terms of maturity. But what I did see was progress in terms, for example, we were talking about his footwork last week, and so I was watching that in particular, and what I did see was, unlike prior weeks, he was stepping up in the pocket. I hadn't seen that prior weeks,
right?
And that's a subtle thing. I'm not sophisticated enough to have paid attention to that, unless other analysts pointed it out. But it's definitely something I saw even in the first series. So did you see something similar?
Yes. Well, one of the plays I saw was he kind of reverted back, which is he tends to scramble backwards.
Yeah.
Which makes coaches nuts. And
Yeah.
you could get away with that in college when you're playing podunk tech,
Right.
and throw a 70-yard bomb and somebody catches it. But in the NFL, you keep going backwards, man, you are burying your team. So I saw him on one play. Drop back, and when he was forced out of the pocket, he was forced backwards instead of stepping up or going either right or left, right,
Yeah.
which can really hurt a defense when you do that. Let's look at some of the other players because we want to compare apples to apples, and I think about guys like Bo Nix, whose rookie year was just okay, and then he's just moving along now with and lighting the world on fire in Denver. Drake May in New England.
Yeah.
As he's in his early part of his career, really figuring it out and catching on. Let's look at this year's rookies. Cam Ward, is sitting there. He's completing about 60% of his passes. We won't, the yardage isn't important because they haven't all played the same games as one another, but he's completed about 60% of his passes, so 13 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. So you expect a high interception rate for young quarterbacks because it's easy for them to get confused. As we go down the list, and I'm trying to look at some of the Jackson Dart, of course, your guy with the
Yeah.
Giants, completed 62% of his passes, 13 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. He's also been rushing like crazy, which he will not do long.
Right.
I think somebody's
One way
going
or
to
the other. He's going to
let
figure
him
it
know
out. He's
one way
going
or
to,
the other
yeah.
that you know what, we don't need you to run as much as you do. Tyler Shock. I mean, this guy, nobody thought this guy would even be starting. He's completed 66% of his passes. Now, his touchdown interception ratio is 7 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, so that's not great.
By the way, I happened to be at the Superdome the first game they put him in, that they subbed him in. That's a big kid.
Yeah,
I didn't realize, but he's got some size to him. He's
and he
got
can
some
run.
precision to him. The
Right,
game took a totally different tenor once that kid went in. And I like what I'm saying. Solid, maybe not as high of an upside as some of the other
right.
the Bo Nixes of the world, but I like I like what I saw.
And he can run. And here's the thing, though here's the thing about quarterbacks. Coaches really want their quarterbacks to pass the ball as much as possible. Your feet are to get you out of trouble. Good feet, like Aaron Rodgers has great feet. He's not the fastest guy in the world. His feet were great when he was in his prime
Yeah.
to get him out of the pocket and out of trouble, and he would still throw the ball downfield, right? Case in point, Lamar Jackson, right? I mean, he's banged up all the time now.
Yeah.
It's catching up to him, all that running that he does. And he's incredible to watch when he's running down the field.
Here's an argument against that, though. Is you mentioned Jackson Dart.
Yep.
I think that Jackson Dart has taken a step backwards, and the difference was once Kafka took over for Dable, he's turned Jackson Dart into essentially a pocket passer, and we've seen a regression over these last 3 games. And I
Right.
wonder if it's because he
It's
took the
harder.
fire out, the
No, it's harder.
improvisational, out of Jackson Dart.
Well, okay, and I agree with you. Being able to improvise is really important for a quarterback. But what's more important, standing in the pocket
Being able to,
and going, through your progressions, 1, 2, 3, 4. You had a chance to watch Old Man Rivers, and I don't know
yeah,
if you saw him on Monday Night Football. He is a shell of himself physically, right?
yeah,
He can hardly throw the ball. He can hardly move. But you know what? What happens to quarterbacks? They get smarter. The
he's a
older they are,
conductor.
they
Yeah.
get smarter. They can read. They've seen all these defenses. They know. So avoiding the confusion is what makes these quarterbacks fantastic. It makes the Tom Brady's, the Patrick Mahomes, the Joe Montanas who they are. I don't care if you can scramble and run 60 yards downfield. Eventually, somebody's going to catch you and beat your brains in. Shedeur Sanders, getting back to as we were comparing to the other rookies, he's right now, if I'm reading the numbers right, he's I think completed 55% of his passes,
He had better completion percentage this last game, so that was encouraging to see.
6 touchdowns, I think eight interceptions. His compatriot Dylan Gabriel had completed 59% of his passes before he got hurt, had 7 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. Looking down, I was just thinking about some of these other teams have gone to their rookies, right? They didn't
Yeah,
want to, like Miami. Quinn Ewers out of Texas is now
I'm keeping an
starting
eye on Quinn
for the
Ewers.
Dolphins.
Yeah,
Uh,
keeping an eye
he
on him.
he could
Not,
be okay,
yeah.
and I'm trying to
He had a
look
good
up.
first half against Cincy, by the way.
Yeah, he did, but they got pounded. We'll see if he's ready for prime time. I'm looking for the guy that the Jets are now starting.
Oh, I can't even tell you. It's Joe Schmo is who they're saying. It
It
doesn't
is
even
Joe
matter.
Schmo.
It doesn't
It,
matter.
it matters because he was an undrafted free agent, and he's now they've handed the keys to the the car over to this guy who is an undrafted free agent. I mean, that's how bad it's gotten with the Jets. I mean, I don't know what else
Do
they're
you
going to
think
do
the
there.
Mannings will allow their kid to go to the if somehow falls to the New York Jets, not whether it's this year, next year, whenever? Do you think the Mannings will let Arch Manning go to the Jets?
Well, didn't old man Archie step in
Yeah, he did
when
when Eli was drafted.
when Eli was was it Was that the Chargers or who was it at
It
the
was the
time? Or
Chargers, yeah,
Indianapolis or somebody. I
because
can't remember.
they switched spots. Speaking of Old Man Rivers, they switched spots essentially so that
Hmm.
Rivers ended up going to San Diego, and the Giants drafted future Hall of Fame. What's his name? Great defensive lineman, or was he a linebacker? I'm trying to remember now. But the Giants drafted him, traded him in the first round for the number one spot. So they ultimately got Eli Manning. I think was this the 2006 draft? Am I remembering this all
Well,
right?
you're asking me to go back in time with you, which is tough.
Who did the let's see. I'm gonna who did the Giants trade to get Eli Manning?
As we do this on the fly. Oh
Philip
man.
Rivers, but no, they drafted Chargers received Philip Rivers, third rounder, first rounder. No, it's not telling me. Yeah, they ended up getting Rivers in that draft, but they must. You know what it was? They with the pick, they drafted this guy that I'm thinking of. I promise you, by the next show, I'll figure this out. It's not coming readily to
I
me, but I'll
will.
figure this out.
And while you were doing that, I was trying to find the name of the Jets undrafted free agent quarterback's name is Brady Cook,
Brady
not to
Cook,
be confused with Tom Brady.
right?
He passed for 22 of 35, 188 yards, one interception against the Saints, who played their quarterback Tyler Shuck, who was 32 49 for 308 yards
Yeah.
and a touchdown. Could those be the quarterbacks of the future? So there we are. We don't know, where Shedeur Sanders is going to wind up when this is all said and done. I don't know what kind of a test this is for him as the Browns go through the season. It's an opportunity for them to see what they have as an asset. Is he a quarterback they want to develop for the future? Is he somebody that might become a trading chip to a team like the Raiders or another team that needs a quarterback? We'll see, but it's always hard to tell what the numbers are. It's going to be what the rumors are behind the scenes as to the kind of guy that he is with his teammates, and is he in the film? Is he sleeping in the film room? Is he the first guy there and the last guy to leave? Is he working extra with some of his teammates? That for me is what it's going to come down with him, to where they can say, all right, there's some potential there. We'll see what's going to go on.
There's one rookie QB before we move on that we're not going to be talking about him this year, maybe
Yeah.
not even talking about him next year, but in about 3 or 4 years, we're going to be talking about him. His name is Will Howard. He is the backup for Pittsburgh. He's
Yeah.
got great coaching, had a great college career, won the national championship with Ohio State
Ohio
last
State.
year,
Yep. Buckeye. Uh-huh.
but had a good college career before he transferred to Ohio State. Now he's able to grow under Aaron Rodgers, great coaching staff at Pittsburgh. So in about 2 years, I'm gonna look for this
All right.
young Will Howard to
Let's
emerge.
see. Let's see what happens there. There are going to be a lot of quarterbacks drafted, I think, in this next draft as well. So,
Yeah,
because a lot of teams need either current quarterbacks or future replacements. So,
yeah.
it's going to be an interesting draft for that. All right, let's continue with off-field shenanigans. And here's one I didn't see coming: Puka Nacua. Puka Nacua, whose his teammates love this guy, consider one of the hardest working players in football, one of the most physical, is one of the leading receivers since he came to the Rams as a rookie. Got himself into a little trouble. Made the mistake that lots of people make, which is they go on a podcast and they just start talking about stuff as if nobody's going to listen and hear it. And he went on a show. A couple of these guys reminds me of the old school radio guys that would call up and make prank calls to people, and they thought it was hilarious, and it was it made for a good radio, or the radio promotions where the disc jockey would go sleep up in a tree for 7 nights. Some of the podcasters do things like that that they find very funny, and I'm not so sure. Puka appeared on one of those podcasts, and he was, and the hosts said, I'm not even going to name them, told Puka, or said to Puka, hey, next time you score a touchdown, let's do a touchdown celebration, and here, try this and do that. So there, Puka is. He's going through the motions of what this touchdown celebration might look like. He agrees to do it in in the next game, which is the game they had against Seattle, and guess what? It turns out that what they were teaching him was, had some offensive gestures involved, and some called anti-Semitic. Puka's a young guy, things happen. Young people make mistakes. This was just part of the podcast. He also was ripping the referees and made the comment that referees try to make bad calls just so that they can be on TV, right? So that they can call attention to themselves. Well, he got fined for that. He was fined $25,000 for his comments made about referees, which I hope he feels. But as far as the anti-Semitic gestures, he's apologized, said he had no idea what he was doing was offensive. I take him at his word. I think he's a young guy, and young guys can be knuckleheads. You have any thoughts on either of these? I'm not looking for the I guess the political part of it so much as how much slack do we give a young player who doesn't know what he's getting into, and then I have some thoughts of
Yeah.
On that as well.
So I did a lot of research on this one because it was hard to find a imagery of him doing the actual dance that was referred to.
Yeah.
So first, I need to preface this by a couple things. One is I grew up in an observant Jewish family, went to an Orthodox synagogue. Also, we need to acknowledge that this is a very sensitive time for Jewish people all around the world, especially post October 7th, especially in light of what happened in Australia just a couple of weeks ago. It's a very, very sensitive time. But I do think it's worth noting that one of the hosts, if you don't want to name him, that's okay. But one of the hosts, the one who took the lead on this, is actually Jewish.
Yeah.
And he's the one that coaxed Puka into doing this dance or these movements.
Right.
I honestly don't think Puka has a hateful bone in his body. I think he was completely naive. I do want to give him a lot of grace. I'm glad he apologized, but for me as a Jew, it was unnecessary. I just feel bad for the guy that he was duped in the way that he was.
I think that bothered me more.
If anything,
right?
It speaks to what you were just saying, that athletes shouldn't be doing these long form. It's not even interviews. They're
during the season, right? A few days
something.
Before a huge game, right?
Yeah. So that's what it speaks to for me.
I didn't see the gesture either. When I read the gesture, though, as a non-Jew, I didn't understand it. I didn't understand what the gesture was. You don't need to go through it for me. And so I know, as because I've been on this earth a long time, what some of the the racist tropes and trolling and anti-Semitic trolling that goes on. So I've seen a lot of those firsthand as a guy who's been on the planet for a while. That's one I wasn't familiar with. You can show it to me off camera, and I'll tell you if I recognized it. So I could see where somebody could have been fooled into that quite easily.
There are some gestures that you should know.
That are obvious, right?
Yeah,
you should know.
If you salute,
is this one of them?
If you salute like Heil Hitler, then
sure.
you got to know that. Right. But there are some others that you have to do a lot of, even for somebody like me, that I have to do a lot of digging to figure out what the reference was.
Right.
I don't know. To me, it's a stretch. I feel more bad for the guy that he was duped in the way that he was, but I'm still glad that he took accountability for it. He's a sensitive guy. I give him a lot of grace on this one.
And what's it say about the host? That he thinks that's funny.
I don't know the host. I haven't listened to a single minute of his podcast or whatever the hell it is. But there's a lot of people who are clicking on that nonsense.
Sure,
but that's not my style.
That's how they gain notoriety, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's how people will pay attention to them, is if they do something like that. And again, duping this young guy who's now listen. This kind of gets to the whole idea of, if you're going to go on a podcast, there's a good chance somebody might hear it somewhere at some point in time, right?
Yeah.
It's not going to go away. Guess who did the very same thing and should know better? Quentin Tarantino, one of the greatest directors of our current generation, did a podcast interview and called out a couple of actors, Owen Wilson, Paul Dano, and I was trying to think of the other one and there he was just having a conversation and was talking about all these movies that he loves, and was kind of making fun of a couple of the actors who were, and I can't remember the third one. He was in the Scream, the first Scream movie. And what you take a guy who's experienced and should know better, like a Tarantino, he's got people's careers in the palm of his hand. That guy. Yeah. Like, what are you thinking, Quentin? You can have your opinion when you're around having a couple of drinks with your friends, like Corey and I will, on New Year's Eve. But you go on the air and you're talking about people. you are in a position of responsibility. You're not going to hear Spielberg do that. You're not going to hear Tom Hanks do that. You're one of those guys, Quentin, that you can make or break careers
Yeah.
with something as silly as your opinion, your subjective opinion about some of these actors. I know you're a great director, and you should know great actors from bad ones. You've worked with a lot of them, and I could point out some of his movies where I'd say that guy's not the best actor I've ever seen before, at least for me as a civilian when it comes to that. So it happens to the best of them, is my
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. The other part of what Puka was talking about, though, that should be pointed out is it was just a lack of restraint. I know he was
Yeah,
frustrated with some of the calls. Any professional athlete's going to have moments where they're frustrated, but he's got to. I mean, even though
yeah,
he's 20 nothing years old, like we talked about
sure,
with Shedeur all these
sure,
weeks.
yeah,
24, I think he is, so still a
uh-huh,
relatively young guy. He's
right.
got to know better. It shows some
He
restraint.
should. Well, and so that's and again, some might argue that when is a guy his dumbest? It's,
Yeah.
early 20s, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Some even say, hey, that's why we send these young guys to war. They're rah rah hoo ha, and because they don't know any better, and they're quite ignorant, right? And so I think in this case, um, McVay, here's the problem. He was a distraction to his team this week.
Yeah.
Now he wasn't distracted because he went off. He had over 200 yards receiving against Seattle in a huge game. But in the locker room afterwards, he starts ripping there. Is that going to be what he's known for? As the guy who's going to
I
be
don't think
a
so.
referee activist?
I
Because
don't
come on,
think so.
Puka, that's
You've
ridiculous.
heard Puka enough and seen him in enough long form interviews.
Yeah,
Uh, I think,
humble, sweet kid.
yeah, really
So
sweet kid.
don't go there.
Yeah, right, right.
Don't go there. And in the same week this was all going on, his brother got arrested.
Yeah,
A car was stolen. A member of the Lakers had his car stolen, and
not a good week
Puka's
for the
brother would
Nacuas.
no. So it's don't dig deeper, right? And I
Yeah,
think the beauty of where he is really lucky to be in the Rams organization because I think McVay will set him straight.
yeah.
Now McVay will say, "I'm going to wrap my arm around him. I'm going to take this walk with him." But I have a feeling behind the scenes, McVay's like, "What the are you thinking about?"
And his quarterback too. His quarterback's going to take him under
Yeah,
his wing
Matthew
too.
Stafford's going to exactly.
Yeah,
That this is where he might miss Cooper Cup a little bit too,
that's
right?
right. Yeah,
Because that was his
Cooper's.
mentor.
Yeah,
Pop that culture.
So did you watch the big fight over the weekend, or
I
so-called big
did.
fight? Anthony Joshua and Jake Paul. I'm one of those that watches the Jake Paul fights only because I wanted to see him lose.
Yeah,
I covered boxing for a long time. I've seen some of the greatest champions ever in the ring, and I just found him coming onto the scene to be laughable, not credible. Though I will tell you that as a person who walked from the social media world into the boxing ring, he got himself in great shape. He knows how to box, but I knew he wasn't at the level of a professional boxer. And finding a 50-year-old Mike Tyson who was holding back punches, I mean, that was obvious to me. He gets in the ring this time, and with a guy who wasn't part of the plan of, hey, I'm going to carry you, and at the end it'll be a draw. This is a guy who still wants to fight Anthony Joshua. He still wants to be a champion again and a heavyweight and a much bigger man. Wound up breaking Jake Paul's jaw during the fight.
oh, I didn't realize that. Okay.
During the fight, you could, fighters who are in trouble will clinch.
Yeah.
And sometimes they clinch to avoid
But
getting hit.
but
But
that's a whole other
he
level.
was clinching his ankles.
Yeah, there's a
Joshua's
whole other
ankles.
level of clinching.
I mean, he's like, I'm going to make sure because when he clinched high, you saw Joshua going with those kidney punches that these boxers are so good at, man. They're just blasting your kidneys as you're holding on to them. That's why Paul went kind of down to where the ankles were, so he couldn't get hit with anything. Paul eventually got beaten. He was very classy after the fight.
Yeah.
Admitted he probably picked the wrong opponent. Joshua was too. I give them both credits. These guys made gazillions.
Gazillions.
I mean, it's crazy how much they. In fact, if this report is true, Joshua made so much money, he was taxed around $66 million between Great Britain and the US.
So that
$66 million.
I can't imagine that he made less than 150 million on that fight. I don't know exactly what the numbers were,
They
but
said they earned roughly 93 million each.
okay, yeah. So I
Well,
mean, that's a nice payday, but 66 million
sure.
is pretty steep.
That's a lot of that's a lot of taxes.
Still, you're walking away with tens of millions of dollars. But I will say this: that first of all, when I saw Anthony Joshua, I wasn't familiar with him as a fighter.
Yeah.
That guy's a large human being.
Yeah. Yeah. He's a true heavyweight boxer,
A
right?
true heavyweight. He was in great shape. I will say this
Yeah.
too: that Josh Paul, I've seen a couple of his other fights before
Yeah.
this. He was not in quite as good a shape as I'd seen him, say, for the Tyson fight, for example. And in previous fights, this one was not a good. He was not a good showing, obviously. But he's while he hasn't turned himself into a real championship caliber fighter, he's
No.
turned himself into a credible boxer. You know, he's worked his ass off, and he's he's a mid-range pro is how I would grade him.
It depends on your I mean, look, I just think that he, again, better than most when it comes to boxing. When I say most, you boxed a little bit. I goofed around with it as well. You could tell he's learned some good techniques, but not professional boxing techniques. He just doesn't. If you look at like MMA fighters who are really, really, really good,
Yeah,
a lot of those guys are not great boxers. Some of them are.
yeah,
Others are better at some of the wrestling techniques. But boxers, I mean, I've always contended the greatest athletes in the world are boxers
Why do
in
you say
terms of
that?
their conditioning and strength wise.
Okay.
Not necessarily coordination of being able to do 360 dunks but just in the kind of shape they are in. Nobody trains harder than a boxer. It's just amazing how much they put into because holding up these arms don't seem like much. Try to hold these up for 3 minutes and bounce around and duck and move around. Just holding your arms, not even throwing a punch.
Yeah, after you've gotten pounded in the head for 3 or 4 or 5 rounds.
Okay. Or
Yeah,
even throwing a punch and missing, how
yeah,
much that takes out of you. And by the way, they only win 8 rounds. I mean, Jake Paul's fights are 8 rounds. He's not doing 12 rounds, which
right.
is what, you would have to do to be in a championship fight. So, I guess part of this story was to talk about, did Jake Paul finally get his? And a great amount of the tune-in for those fights was for people who wanted to see that happen, and the other ones are big fans of his who wanted to
Yeah,
see him do well. Probably now realize he's not a real boxer. He's just
yeah,
not.
yeah.
And probably most shocking of all is that they each made $93 million, and to top that off, one of the guys had to pay $66 million in taxes.
Crazy. Yeah, I remember one of Mike Tyson's early fights. It's got to be 88, 89, and it was a storied champion. I don't think Mike Tyson had won his first championship yet, and he was just clinching the entire fight. It was such a
Yeah,
disappointing fight until Tyson finally landed a blow that put him at one blow and put him out. I forgot the
Tyson.
name of the fighter, but it was even worse than that. I mean, Jake Paul did not have a good showing.
Yeah, Tyson's nobody. I don't think anybody threw a harder punch than Mike Tyson. Although it could be said that some of the guys that Ali fought, Ken Norton. I
Yeah.
think Norton may have broken Ali's jaw. That's what happened to
Were
to
you
Jake Paul.
already a journalist during the great years of the middleweights, the Sugar Ray Leonards and
Yes, I
Haglers
covered a
and
little bit of that, and
Hearns?
I interviewed Marvin Hagler.
Oh
And Marvin
wow.
Marvin Hagler delivered one of my favorite all-time lines during my interview when he talked about how he. I'll give you two quick stories on that before we say goodbye. Here is uh, Marvin Hagler said to me that when he gets in the ring, he looks across at his opponent, and Hagler kind of took on the villain sort of I guess branding for all of his
Yeah.
fights. He was the guy who wore the black hat, right?
Right.
But man, what a neat guy he was. And he said to me, Rick, when I look across the ring, I look at that guy and I said, that guy's taking food out of my baby's mouths.
Oh wow.
That's what motivated him to crush them. My other Hagler story is I interviewed the hitman, Thomas Hearns,
Yeah.
after he fought Hagler.
Okay.
There were rumors, not immediately after the fight, but months later, there were rumors that he wanted a rematch. And I don't know if you ever saw the fight between Hagler and Hearns.
One
Go
of the
watch
best
it.
fights ever.
One of the best, 3 or 4 round fights ever.
Yeah.
Because Hearns, who had a powerful punch, but his ankles were like this big around, like my pinky. So it was amazing that he had the kind of power he did. And so he cuts Hagler. Hagler, sees that he's cut. He, rubs his glove. He sees he's cut. They're about to stop the fight. He proceeds to just lay into Hearns and gives Hearns one of the biggest beatings I've ever seen of any boxer in a fight. So almost a year later, I'm doing an interview with Hearns, and he's going to make an appearance on an old show that was at Fox when I was there, the Joan Rivers show. He was going to be a guest on the Joan Rivers show. And so I'm doing this interview, and he said, "Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I want to have this rematch. I can't wait to fight him again." I said, "Tommy, let me ask you a question. I saw you hitting a man as hard as I've ever seen a man get hit in my life. And he not only did he not stop, but he kept pushing toward you." I said, "Why would you want to do that again?" And I'm not kidding you. This is a moment where I have a freeze frame of Hearns' look on his face as if to say, "That's a great point, Rick." He didn't say that. He didn't say that. But I know what he was thinking. Like, why on earth would I go back into the ring with Marvin Hagler? Listen, holidays are upon us. I'll give you one last chance to tell me what you would like. What would your biggest sports gift be if you could get a sports present involving one of your teams or anything of a sports nature as we go into the holidays? What would be a great holiday gift for you?
Well, I'm dreaming big.
Yeah.
When this show takes over the world,
okay,
what we're going to do,
not asking for much,
is we're going to get a private jet so I can fly back and forth at least once a week to New York, and get a luxury box at Citi Field.
Oh, okay.
I'm dreaming big.
That'll okay. For me, look, I'm not going that big. I think I would like to have a Super Bowl to go right next to my World Series. So if the Rams could win another Super Bowl to go along with that Dodger World Series this season, I would be a happy man. And I think there's a chance.
Yeah. Well, I'll have to think about more realistic terms in terms of the say, I don't know, the Mets signing Cody Bellinger. So that something like that. I got to see the rest of the offseason because I'm not happy right now.
Not so far. I'm sure there's a utility guy out there, another utility guy out there.
You're killing me, Rick. You're killing me.
Enjoy your holidays, and to our folks watching this podcast, we hope you enjoy your holidays too. I'm Rick Garcia. He's Corey Nathan. It's East meets West. We thank you so much for joining us.
And don't forget to let everyone know you can find us on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and wherever you get your favorite podcast. Happy holidays, Rick.
Baby got